A pleasure to meet all at last. And for today's segment of HJN Super Graphics, I am more than humbled to present a certain indie game. But this ain't just any indie game. This is something that has been made possible thanks to the likes of Kula and Viv, Annapurna Interactive, as well as Blue 12 Studios. So, allow me to introduce to you Stray for number 2594. Well, I feel like this is going to be a good one here because I played this when it was brand new on PlayStation Plus back in August of 2022, and coming at about 2.5 years later, I'm more than willing to talk about my overall experience with that game. I will say that Stray was certainly a unique idea. Being able to control a cat in the same way as we basically could control a fox in such games like Endling or Spirit of the North. But the thing is, controlling an animal in a game, it seems to be a commonplace when it comes to modern day games, especially when you get to utilize the third person perspective. But Stray basically takes us through the journey of a certain cat who becomes an unlikely hero of a dead, forgotten city deep underground. Let me explain here. The thing is, you have yourself an orange cat. Yeah, even I somehow am not very familiar with species names and whatnot, but the thing is that this cat is traveling with some other cats and ends up getting separated after he falls down, presumably to its death. Thankfully, he survives, but is barely able to get out of there. Unfortunately, though, this place that he ends up in ain't exactly very close to the surface. You could say he had a pretty nasty fall, hundreds, even thousands of feet down. And even worse is the fact that there happens to be certain things coming alive and coming after him. But it's up to us players to control this cat, to allow for him to escape with his life, and use his fabled reflexes in order to jump through high gaps, make it up high surfaces, and climb up various structures. The whole idea of putting an actual cat into a game and controlling the many things that they're capable of doing seems like an incredible idea. We can't really say that this is the first time that a cat in a video game happens to be the main player's focus. But even more crazy is the fact that the world that we tend to see for ourselves through the eyes of this cat, who happens to be Stray, for the record, as in not under the ownership of any person nearby, but this world in particular that this cat discovers is way beyond comprehension. Even us players are a bit conflicted by the idea of having a world underground, a city itself that isn't really seeing the light of day, which I hope will come into play later on in this episode when I talk a bit more about the ending. Yeah. So in any case though, the cat eventually comes across a certain AI-operated droid who floats around and is basically the only segment of dialogue that allows for us players to in fact understand what's going on here. This droid does in fact communicate through speech bubbles, and I will say that the idea of having actual dialogue in the game does at least make it helpful for those who can't exactly understand body language too well, nor about silent narratives, as in stories that don't use dialogue at all. I mean, look at all those Pixar shorts and all those shorts in general. A good bunch of them are very cheaply made, having little to no voice acting. But in this case, an entire game with little audible dialogue in it, let alone none at all, does in fact seem like something not many people would want to try. I mean, dialogue is kind of an important part of the story. It allows for emotions to flourish. It allows for change to be made. It allows for people to understand one's memory, or one's past, or one's possible future. But in this case, we know that cats can't really talk. Not like us, at least. But since robots could, it's kind of hard to visualize the fact of robots living without any voice boxes. But it does seem that on occasion, that does seem to be happening. In any case though, our Fabled Cat explores this town, some sort of slums, and goes around interacting with the many locals that are inside, including a musician whom, well, in fact, can actually play music for you. In different ways, of course. He has a variety of different songs, that of which he has trouble remembering, but if you collect certain items for him, he'll actually remember certain songs that he's played in the past and has since forgotten, for whatever reason. The whole idea of mystery in this game seems to be well incorporated into the plot, because there's not just any slums, but it seems that the locals, whom are robots, whom are somehow still alive and trying to flourish as well as possible in spite of the circumstances, does in fact allow for us players to ask a lot of questions. Remember when I spent almost a whole hour talking about security breach? Oof. There was just so much worth talking about in that game. And I feel like that here in Stray, despite being around the same time length based on gameplay, and also not necessarily having anything extra for us to explore or look at, I'm sure I will have plenty to say about this game as well. The fact is, it's coming from an indie producer, much like Security Breach did. Steel Bull, Blue 12, I sure hope that they grow nice and big and even make more games, because I'd be willing to pay top dollar for them should they ever come out with them. Anyways, the slums eventually become part of the mystery, but with the many clues that we discover along the way, and eventually the troublemakers whom are responsible for this whole devastation. Well, going in further into the city, we do in fact get to see a number of things unfold, including jail work, downtown street cred, and even a boombox, which does seem to play music in the background. A large vista, akin to what most hotels are like nowadays, does seem to also be a nice big place worth exploring, but unfortunately, some of these segments happen to be guarded with robots. Yeah, robotic guards. Not exactly in a positive way, but kind of more on the fact that they want to find this cat and euthanize it. Yeah. But thankfully, we are able to get out of the mess here. The cat is able to make its way over to a certain control room, which, believe it or not, is actually the solution to the problem. You see, the ceiling above some sort of giant skylight had apparently been sealed. This seal had created darkness above the city forever and ever, until the day that a cat and a droid assistant are able to get the power back on and get that gate open. And when all that's said and done, the cat does make his way up to the surface, and all is well. He reunites with his own kind, he and the droid part ways, and there you have it. You have a big piece of history. Probably one out of maybe a dozen games from 2022 that I am very proud of. I mean, it's just the fact that it's an indie game. You don't exactly see those all too often. But I sure do hope that more like this happen to show up. Because Security Breach and Stray are just a few big examples of things we've gotten in recent years where indie publishers and developers, as well as big-time creators, happen to come together in order to create something new and exciting. And I sure do hope that in the future, we do get more of this stuff. Moreover, I feel like that the idea of a cat exploring through slums might not be enough. Could there be a sequel where Stray does pick up where we left off, where the cat gets separated again, this time having to explore an underwater facility? Or maybe you can go up to space. Yeah, I feel like the possibilities could be endless, but maybe ridiculous at the same time. It might sometimes be worth it only for the fact that if people were curious enough to see what this cat could also accomplish with its own feline instincts and whatnot, I get the feeling that some people might not be on par with it. They might be against it for all we know. In the end, because of how big this game is, and because of how much I enjoyed playing it, the mystery, the slumminess, the unique gloomy feeling of being left behind or being forgotten for a long time or being controlled by something outside of society for long periods of time. The unique feeling about this game just does give a lot of vibes. It gives us a lot of vibes to certain old flicks like Blade Runner or the Super Mario Brothers film, or anything in which that you have the rich and the poor not coexisting too well. It also does give us a lot of feelings about how a society may not be under too good of control if somebody corrupt and sinister happens to be in charge. It also does remind us of the fact that sometimes there's an unlikely hero on the faces of something dire and horrifying. And with that in mind, Stray gets a good 8.6 out of 10.1. So almost on the bit of a masterpiece, but I get the feeling that perhaps if the time length were a lot higher, considering how much the price of the game itself is, but then again, playing it on PlayStation Plus did help make it worthwhile, and I get the feeling that some people are going to want me to talk a bit more about other indie games, but not to worry, I can deal with them at some point in the future. But for now, make sure to like, subscribe, comment, follow me wherever you can find me, and stay on the Hollywood side for more.